Welcome to Live and Let's Dice. Live and Let's Dice.
So welcome back to Live and Let's Dice. We're doing a new interlude of character making and how to actually set up your character sheet. So really this is like a tutorial, like a beginner's tutorial.
Like a how to set up your character sheet. Because there's a lot of information on the actual character sheet itself. And a lot of it's really confusing. So we're just going to briefly go over what's on the sheet, what you're looking at, and then we're going to help make a character for Emily. For your... I keep thinking, there's just so much to say.
I think you need to keep it short, sweet, and simple. You have your stats, which are essential to who your character is with their skills, and then the different components about what happens if you get hit or if you're hitting someone else. With all the other things, you really don't need to write them down if you know who your character is, and then you know your spells or what you have to work with, then you can go from there. And so I think the important stuff is not getting muddled down in the details, because I think far too many YouTubers for D&D get muddled in those details. And I think they're presenting to an audience of other D&D players, so for someone like you, you're like, oh yeah, this is great and I'm learning so much. But for someone like me, or someone new to the game, it's overwhelming and I don't want to spend 30 minutes trying to understand proficiency bonuses and temporary hit points, and because you're not going to use temporary hit points in your first week, and like half the time you're not even battling. And I think the key is to get someone interested in playing and know the basis so they can get started rather than like overwhelm them with all the details, because you can go into such depth for all of these things. Yeah, so as a beginner, the D&D sheet is kind of complicated in some regards. Some of it's pretty self-explanatory, like the character name, picking a class, a race, and an alignment. I think the trickiest and most important part, though, is looking at your different, what is it called?
The stats. You have 6 stats along the side. On the left side, you have strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma.
I think the trickiest 2 are the next 2 in the lineup going down. And that's dexterity and constitution. And I always confuse those ones.
Yeah, so dexterity is kind of like how nimble you are. How can you manually do something with your hands? For example, finesse weapons like what they call the rapier. How well you maneuver that around, or how well or how easily you're able to open locks. And it actually even refers to sometimes, to some degree, how easily you're able to dodge something. For example, if a giant breath, like a dragon's breathing fire down on the characters, a nimble character is more easily able to dodge out of the way and negate some of that damage. Constitution kind of refers to how physically capable your character is at shrugging off attacks. So, is your character strong enough to withstand this poison, or can you drink this bottle of alcohol without getting drunk? Or how it plays on the character sheet itself, the mechanically, it refers to how many hit points you have.
The next one's intelligence, so how smart you are, or how well or how knowledgeable you are about a different situation. Wisdom, how wise. So how does that differ from intelligence?
So intelligence kind of refers to book smarts. I kind of refer to it as like book smarts versus street smarts. Book smarts refers to how easily you can discern like an illusion, or how good you are at investigating. Intelligence refers to like that kind of aspect of it. So how easily you can discern an illusion, or how easily you can recall knowledge. So like a history, like have you read a bunch of books, or do you just naturally kind of know, which is more of the wisdom side of it. And I kind of use wisdom to kind of refer to what I like to call like will checks. So wisdom for me is more, or at least the way I think about it, is more of how easily or how capable your character is in withstanding like different degrees of spells. So some spells ask you to make a will save, a wisdom save. Let's say a wisdom save to be charmed, or a wisdom save to be frightened. That kind of degree.
Charisma is like how charismatic you are. So like a lot of social situations, if you're approaching someone or you want to win someone over or you want to get some details about something, or know some inside advice or knowledge, you can use charisma to kind of help you gain it or come across as friendly and personable and trustworthy. To the stats, you have to the right of the stats column all these different categories for saving throws as well as skills. And basically, all of these relate to those main stats, and your character has different abilities or different levels of skill with these different skills, depending on what of the stats they're best at. So if you had a really charismatic character, you can see on the skills that some of the things like deception, intimidation, performance, persuasion are all associated with charisma. So it helps you figure out kind of, if you are a charismatic character, what are the skills that you are adept at.
Yeah. And for the saving throws, it's more of, and kind of along the same lines, refers to your race or your classes. Specifically kind of how good they are at avoiding these dangers. So for example, a strength saving throw would be preventing from being knocked down or escaping a grapple, and that kind of also ties in with dexterity too, is escaping a grapple, but just in a different way, but also kind of dodging out of, like I said before, the dragon's fire breath. Constitution is, can you avoid being drunk, or can you avoid that poison?
So, is it, when it comes to saving, what is a saving throw though?
So typically the DM will say, make a saving throw against this.
Why?
Because let's say I make a character, or I guess let's say I'm playing it, like the easiest one is I'm a dragon. And the dragon breathes fire on you guys. And the easiest way to avoid the dragon's fire breath is to jump out of the way or kind of duck down.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you will take some damage, but you're not going to take the full brunt of the damage. So I'll say make a dexterity saving throw.
So your ability to dodge the dragon.
Yes.
Okay, and so depending on your stats, you're going to have a different modifier to add to your dexterity when it comes to saving throws?
Yeah, so your class, each class will give you 2 saving throws. So for example, wizards have intelligence and wisdom saving throws as they're proficient with. So you fill in the proficiency bubble, and then you put on top of that, you add your modifier. And we'll talk about modifiers when we get to the actual character sheet. But then you add those 2 together, and when you roll your d20, your 20-sided dice, you add the sum of the proficiency, the sum of the modifier, and your dice roll to give you what you roll. And then normally if you're proficient with something and you have a high stat in it, normally you're more likely to succeed at that.
Okay, so it depends. So is it based on class or race?
Class. So
Okay.
saving throws are always designed by class. You can have a various degree of skills, some brought to you by your class, some brought to you by your background, some brought to you by your race. But the saving throws are only from your class.
Okay, so that gives advantage to each class in a different component.
Yeah, they'll get certain bumps to certain saves.
Okay, got it. So, druid might have a harder time having a dex saving throw from a dragon's fire than, say,
Like a rogue.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I might get more damage than them, but in another situation where it comes to intelligence, I might have. Or like, where would an intelligence or charisma saving throw come into play?
So charisma saving throw would be kind of like the big bad Strahd Benzarvich. He would make you a charm, and you would have to succeed a charisma saving throw to avoid being charmed. because his personality is so strong that it kind of overshadows your own. It makes you kind of want to do something.
Gotcha.
An intelligence one would be, I cast an illusion on the ground to make it there appear like there's lava. And you see lava, but are you smart enough to discern that actually it's not actually lava? There's no way you can make lava there.
So there's actually magic.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool.
The next three little boxes in the kind of the middle portion of this sheet is the armor class. So how hard is it to hit your character? And it refers to kind of two different ways too. So you can be like a martial fighter, and you can wear big heavy plate armor, so it's actually like physically difficult to actually damage you when a blow lands. Or you can be very dexterous, and it's very hard to actually hit your character because you're so easily able to move out of the way. It's kind of how armor class works in this game. Initiative is more, it's just your dexterity modifier, but when you actually get into combat and your DM says, hey, roll for initiative, it kind of tells you the order in which, how fast your character is at jumping into battle, or how ready they are for battle. And the last one's speed. Speed is just kind of how fast you can move in a turn. So current hit points is kind of your hit point max. I definitely recommend when you do this that you don't actually write in every single time you lose hit points on this little bitty box, because you're going to quickly run out of space. I recommend calculating your maximum hit points, which is, we'll go into that in the character sheet, but I recommend getting a sticky note and putting that down and then tracking your hit points on that sticky note, and only ever changing that number when you gain a level, so you gain more hit points. As for temporary hit points, sometimes certain spells give you a certain amount of, I like to kind of refer to them as kind of like a little shield, like a little buffer of hit points. So for example, your new character will have, under the druid they have a circle of dreams. One of their abilities allows them to give health and give a temporary hit dice to, or temporary hit points to that class or to that character. Successes and failures when it comes to death saves. Typically it's you roll a 20-sided dice and you add your constitution to it, and if it's above 10 you'll save, and if it's below 10 you'll take one of those failures. And then depending on whether or not you pass or fail 3 times, it depicts whether or not you'll be unconscious but stable on the ground when you hit 0 hit points, or you'll be dead when you hit 0 hit points and you're unconscious on the ground.
So if you have 3 successes, you still be unconscious?
You'd still be unconscious on the ground until someone helped you out.
Gotcha. So in the right column you have little blurb boxes where you can describe your personality traits, your ideals, your bonds, and your flaws. And this is kind of a small way to convey who your character is and what they're all about. So it gives your other players a better sense of who they're playing with, as well as kind of gives you some quick reminders as to what are the big components of your character, keeping them tied to their flaws and their ideals, and who they're actually bonded to. So it's a nice little thing that you can just put in a few bullet points to kind of document that and keep it tied to your character.
Now the top left portion of this sheet is useful, and I think that the bottom kind of row and the bottom right are kind of very useless.
I think it's tricky because there are a lot of pieces, and I think the more you get into it, the more in depth you are, the longer you play, the more you're going to use those things. Like I had to use my, saving death saves and saving throws, and we had to use temporary hit points, and everything comes into play at some point, but as a basis for getting started, I think it's important to focus on simplicity.
Yeah. Our next video we'll talk about how to flesh out the character sheet more, a little bit more depth. We'll actually show you her character, which will be a Tiefling Druid.
So just now we spoke about general character sheet components. In the next one, we're gonna make one character's with a specific class and race, their sheet, so you can follow along step by step.
Thank you for watching.